a chance to sign, please sign at the end. But I'm going to start now. Good morning, everybody. Welcome and thanks for being here Monday early morning. I know it isn't easy. So nice to see a full room. I'm Kavita Wankhede from Indian Institute for Human Settlements. And this is my colleague Mahima Vijendra and Santosh Raghavan. Before I introduce the session, I have to say we have an online audience and we have complicated tech here. So if something goes wrong, please bear with us. We'll try to do our best. Moving on to the session, this session is about gender and sanitation, but on a very specific topic, and which is women professionals. Often when we see images of workers in sanitation, we see images of men, but we know that there are a lot of women in sanitation and the residents in the room itself, but they're often invisible. Their contributions are often not valued, and they are not given importance. So what we hope to do through this session is, first of all, identify the challenges collectively. It's very much a learning journey for us as well. And then actually see how we can, as a community, do better for women, recognize their work and what ways we could support them. So that's kind of a broad thing. There is also an assumption that if we have women professionals in the sector, we'll probably do better on gender and sanitation. We can debate whether this assumption is true. And finally, as you will see, when we started working with women professionals, we also realized that it could be a strategic entry point to advance the agenda of gender equality in general. So that's about the session. I'll hand over to, I'll go through the session flow, but before that, let's just get to know each other, who is in the room. And for that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Mahima.
Thanks, Kavita. So we have a few familiar faces here, but we'd still like to know who's with us today. So if you could all just scan the QR code on the screen, and if you're ready, I'm going to quickly run the poll. People online, I hope you've been able to scan the code.
And I'm just going to read out the code if you can't scan it. 6519-6608.
Should we move on to the screen?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, we've already got some.
So it's actually, we have people from all parts of the world except Oceania. And it's pretty distributed, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm going to move on.
Okay,
Or maybe just give it a few seconds.
I think that's done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
that's great to see. That's well represented. Okay, again, a fair bit of diversity. Of course, water, sanitation, gender, most number of people are there.
Interesting. I'm going to move on to the next one.
Okay. So we don't have anybody from a multilateral organization here, and nobody from the press, and nobody unaffiliated. But otherwise, it's quite a mix of government organizations, nonprofits, and university students. Welcome to all of you once more.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just going to take you through the session. It is a very packed session. So we're going to go and move through very quickly, but my promise is the presentations are really short. So basically the agenda is divided into two parts. The first part, we're going to learn, discuss, debate broadly about women professionals in sanitation. And I'm using the word professionals, and we can have a conversation around it. Professionals, the right word, or whether we should be using some other word. But essentially the first part is a short presentation by two organizations involved in this, which is IHS and OVERDUE. followed by breakout groups, and to really hear what all of you think about various themes on this, and we'll report out. The second part, which is the shorter part in the last, say, around 20 minutes, is we will run a short presentation on a women in sanitation campaign. There are some brochures here if you would like to pick up, but more importantly, more concretely discuss how we can move this agenda forward, how can we support this agenda, and we as a group of people are interested, what could we do collectively? So that's a brief overview. Just to say, this was not just done by three of us. There's a huge team that was behind it. Some of them are online, both from OVERDUE, University College London, and also from IHS and plus people who put together videos. So the nice part about which I hope you like is there are a lot of videos in this session which you'll enjoy. With that, we're going to start with the first presentation, which is by OVERDUE. We've recorded it, so Mahima will be playing that. Thanks. Okay.
OVERDUE is a 3-year action research project launched in June 2020, which sets to tackle the sanitation taboo across urban Africa. And as such, we are delighted to join the Tamil Nadu Urban Sanitation Support Program to share reflections on women's work in the sanitation sector. OVERDUE is based on a 3-tiered approach. First, reframing and gendering the sanitation crisis narrative as a taboo, analyzing the colonial and post-colonial processes which relegate sanitation and drive inequities. Second, producing actionable knowledge based on the sanitation experiences, investments, and practices of women and men as users and providers of sanitation services. And third, taking stock and expanding ongoing experimentation towards just sanitation across the continent, fostering regional dialogue and exchanges across scales and stakeholders. We do so as a network of over 25 members and 12 institutions working in 7 African cities located in Senegal, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, DRC, Tanzania, Madagascar, and Mozambique, as well as based in the United Kingdom and in France. Collectively, our gender perspective and action research approach shows that while the sanitation sector is often represented as male-dominated by pit emptiers, construction workers, vacuum truck drivers, in practice, it heavily relies on women's work, handling flows of fecal sludge across the city, from the disposal of bucket toilets to the informal dislodging of pits and community dredging. Women's work is, however, often less paid, if not unpaid, and sometimes not even considered as work. In this direction, OGDS in Saint Louis has been producing short films documenting women's invisible sanitation work, and students of UCL's Development Planning Unit have produced a campaign titled Work, Not Duty. Second, we noticed that formal jobs in sanitation were highly valued across genders as resources and opportunities for growth, though stereotypes often constrained women's career. They were kept in offices, in less qualified positions, and with lower wages and less resources. In Beira, Freetown, and Mwanza, FACE, SLURC, and CCI and RD University have shadowed women managing public toilets and working in sanitation to understand their challenges, needs, and aspirations. In Madagascar, Similarenta and Gender in Action have co-designed information material with women sanitation workers to support their work. Lastly, we documented a disconnection between how much women value sanitation as users and providers of services and the marginalization of sanitation in public discussions, budgets, policies, planning, and promises, especially in off-grid areas. The invisibilization of the impact on men and women of poor sanitation is increased by the limited number of women in leading and representative positions. Across the cities, we have been amplifying the voices of inhabitants, brought together authorities, utilities, and communities around the issue of sanitation, and fostered public discussions. The teams are currently leading strategic interventions in the 7 previously mentioned cities, from the innovative design and management of inclusive facilities in Beira, Bukavu, and Freetown, to the co-production of sanitation infrastructure and bylaws in Mwanza, and the gendering of fecal sludge transformation into biogas or compost in Abidjan, Saint-Louis, and Antananarivo. Throughout, the teams seek to value women's work and to increase investments into sanitation. To partner with OVERDUE, please contact Prof. Adriana Allen, OVERDUE's principal investigator at a.allen@ucl.ac.uk, or connect with us on our website and social media channels. We thank you for your attention and look forward to the discussions.
We'll do a Q&A at the end of the second presentation because the other one is also very short. Okay, while they're sorting out, like I said, I'm Kavita. I'm part of an organization called Indian Institute for Human Settlements. We're based in India. We are a practice-based university, and the focus of our work is on the urban. We translate work from, we try to connect theory and practice in order to do work on the ground and take it forward. As part of that, we've been part of a program called Tamil Nadu Urban Sanitation Support Program. So I'm just going to kind of set the context in which our work with gender evolved. So we are set up as a technical support unit and working closely with government of Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu is a state in South India, one of the urbanized states with a population of 30 million and 649 towns. You can see huge population, almost the size of many countries. And we've been working with them to scale fecal sludge management systems through a variety of means, whether it's looking at investment plans, looking at what kind of infrastructure is required, strengthening institutional framework. Now, as part of that, and as we all, at least the people in this room would be aware, there are multiple stakeholders, and we've been working closely with all of them, not just the government, but also NGOs, sanitation workers, households, etc. And somewhere 1 or 2 years down the line, we shifted our focus really from fecal sludge management to inclusive sanitation. And we do have another session on safety in the afternoon. So we have been working with sanitation workers, looking at how to integrate gender more broadly into sanitation, and also about improving access to urban poor. Our work on gender really started with a study that looked at gender and sanitation across the full chain of sanitation. And not surprisingly, we found that the evidence was limited. While there was a lot of literature around, say, gender and governance or gender and access to toilets specifically, if you look at other parts like disposal and treatment, there was emerging literature, but not too much. And so one of the first things we've been trying to do in our work on gender is actually try to address some of the critical research gaps. For example, what do you do for women in workplaces, access to toilets, etc. One of the interesting things we found in our work is, and not a surprise to people in this room, is basically much of the work in sanitation programming was done to include women to increase the efficiency of the projects themselves, not really to lead towards empowerment. So we've been very conscious that when we work on gender, we try to do work which actually empowers women. And some of the things we've been doing is to making sure that they get the entitlements that they are entitlements they're supposed to get. One of the requests that has come from women sanitation workers is to actually set up legal anti-sexual harassment committees in government, which is POSH in India, which is what we've been working on. But one of the very interesting findings for us in the entire report was we saw how much the perspective for gender and sanitation was skewed towards women as users, or even as women as participants, or women as citizens. But actually, the truth is there's so many women across the chain, and there's not enough said about them, there's not enough understood about them. And given this, we started to do our work on working with the women professionals, which I'll speak to now. So just to say, I think this is evident to all of us, and I hope the group work will throw some of these up. But as you can see, there are just huge number of women, right? The toilet cleaners, they're masons, they're operators, across the chain, they may be cross-cutting city administrators, practitioners, researchers, and we just don't see this. This just remains invisible. So just to say, what are the challenges? Some of these challenges are similar to what we find in other sectors. There isn't data. I think you're all aware about that. Even if you look at SDGs, one of the gap is around gender. There is still a wage gap. There's a lack of women leaders across sectors. And finally, though sanitation is a multifaceted topic, we do find that there aren't enough women in technical roles. Now, this is something specific to other women professionals, which we found in our context is applicable to women sanitation professionals. But if we were to move on to challenges specific to women in sanitation, one is, I think, the emphasis, the division between the formal workforce and informal workforce really becomes stark. Again, not enough data, but in one study published by the World Bank, less than 1/5 of workers in utilities were women. From our work with sanitation workers, even within sanitation workers, there's a slightly more formal workforce which is working with the government, and then there are really informal people for daily wage earners. And we found that as more informal you become, the more number of women there are. There are also issues of career trajectories. It's not enough that there are many women at the starting phase, but as time goes on, they do not move out or they drop off the workforce, and this is especially prevalent in India right now. Ironically, women do not have access to facilities. This is a problem, especially in places like treatment plants or decanting stations, which may not be very close to other public spaces. So this has been reported as a concern. And finally, there is a lot of manual work in sanitation. And if you're looking at PPE or tools or equipment, they are not ergonomically suited to women. And finally, there's a lack of leaders or role models. So these are some of the challenges that we face. Based on this, we weren't able to take on the challenge, and I'm hoping we can collectively move forward of the structural issues of saying, addressing gender gap in government officers, right? That's a far more structural problem. So we focused our work on informal workforce mainly, and in that we've been working essentially on livelihoods. So women who do already have businesses like desludging operators, and you'll see a video of one of them helping them expand their business, helping other women set up their own enterprises, for example, for community and public toilet management, and otherwise also training them for certain supplementary income. We've been helping them strengthen the social protection bit by linking them with various schemes to which they are entitled, and also helping them with documentations, and also looking at financial linkages. On the governance side, I think I've already spoken about it. Those photos are of some of the self-help groups that we work with who are consisting of sanitation workers. So this was 2 short presentations. They were just to kind of set the flavor of the work done, and we'll be moving into breakout groups, but we can take a pause here, Mahima, for 5 minutes and do a quick round of clarificatory questions. And if they're not, we can move on. Okay.
Thanks so much for the presentation. This is Kelly with Pierre. I had a question about this slide, actually. Was there interest of other women who weren't yet in the sector of sanitation, private sanitation role, to join these business trainings and be a part of this whole enterprise development?
To be fair, we haven't worked. What we were doing is working essentially. Yes, there was interest, but our focus primarily was working with women of sanitation workers. So there were instances where the spouse was a sanitation worker and they were interested in allied services like cleaning products and stuff like that. Yeah.
Any questions online?
No, I don't see it.
There's one more.
With more clarification, I think. On the last part, my name is. Okay, my name is Valentin. I work for Finnish Mondial. I had a question on the financial linkages for enterprise promotion.
Yes.
To see that from that thing. So how far have you come on this?
Okay, so in terms of financial linkages, we've been essentially relying on government schemes. So I think you have a very India specific answer. So there's a National Urban Sanitation Livelihood Mission. And as part of that, the government themselves have a mandate to look at sanitation workers. So we've been helping them with that. So these are small loans. For the larger loans, there are other schemes available for the purchase of trucks. But we found that the workers themselves are not inclined to take it. So I would say some work done, but your question is right, it's a work in progress for larger amounts. I think we can move on. Yeah. So you want me to take them through the breakout group first? Yes. So we're gonna form you into groups in a while, but essentially the group work is on 3 areas. Strengthening women's leadership in sanitation, valorizing roles played by women in sanitation, deepening inclusion in sanitation sector. This slide is going to be up. And while in each of the topics, we want you to discuss what are some of the challenges around this, what are some of the enablers. But the report out, and we'll be handing out the sheet soon, will be on what are the 3 key messages on that theme you want us to take away, and why are those messages important. The report out only will be on the 3 key messages, but we will be handing you out to put that. We'll be also handing you out other papers to document your other discussion. We would love to take all the insights away, but the report out will be on 3 key messages. There are some additional points for consideration here. Please feel free to use them, or if you want your discussion to go in another direction, that's also okay with us. We have around 15 odd minutes for the groups. Yeah.
Okay.
You want to
I'll
form the groups?
just, yeah. Hi. So we can form groups of maybe 5 or 6 people each. I'd probably just suggest that people sitting in the same row and maybe the row behind or in front of you, you can just group together if that's okay. And if, couple of rows in the front, maybe you can just move and group together to form maybe groups of 5 and 6 people each. I'd say we have about 5 groups in the room, maybe 5 or 6 groups. And I'll just come around and hand out some of these meta cards where you will be writing down the key messages that come out of your group discussion and some plain sheets for you to write down any other points that you have that you'd like to share with us. So if we can form the groups now, then I'll suggest that, we pick a number between 1 and 3, and depending on the number you have, you discuss the topic that's there up on the screen. And those of us who are online, I think there are no breakout rooms. It will be just one group, and I think the moderators online will decide.
No. So, while you're forming groups, you are going to see something for the first time. Oh, again, sorry about this, but yeah. Three. Yeah. Three. Okay. So we can actually group each of number 1 to 20. Everybody has a number? Yes. Okay. I know you turned around like this, turned around to face each other, but sorry about this. But before you go on to your group work, we wanted you to settle in the group work. We're going to be screening some films from the Women in Sanitation campaign, and this is just to get you starting to think. For all your 3 themes, you will see some of the issues emerging from the women professionals themselves. So we are hoping that you will take that forward. Mahima, if you hand it over, I'll play the film. Yeah.
வணக்கம், நான் டாக்டர் யாழினி, திருச்சி மாநகராட்சியோட நகர் நல அலுவலர். என்னுடைய ஜாபுக்கு நான் வரும்போதே ஃபஸ்ட்டு நான் ட்ரைனிங் எடுத்த ஒரு 2 மாதத்துலேயே சொன்னாங்க, இந்த ஜாப் வந்து லேடிஸ்க்கு வந்து சூட்டபிளான ஜாப் கிடையாது, நீங்கள் டெலிவரி பார்க்குற டாக்டரை மாறிடுங்க, குழந்தைங்க டாக்டரை மாறிடுங்கலாம் சொன்னாங்க. அதை நான் எப்போவுமே ஃபீல் பண்ணது கிடையாது. ஆனால் இந்த கோவிட் வந்து கண்டினியூஸாக 6 மாதம் தொடர்ந்து அட் அ ஸ்ட்ரெச், நாள் கணக்கில் நேரம் வந்து ஒரு நாளுடைய 10 மணி நேரம் 18 மணி நேரம் தொடர்ந்து நம்ம ஒர்க் பண்ணும்போது இந்த எக்ஸாஷன் இருந்துச்சு. அப்போ சந்தேகமாக வந்துச்சு, அவங்க சொன்னது சரியோ அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. பட் எங்களுக்கு சப்போர்ட்டிவாக இருந்தது மாவட்ட ஆட்சியர், எங்களுக்கு அப்போ இருந்த கமிஷனர். அவங்க எல்லாருமே ஜென்ஸாக இருந்தாலுமே அவங்க எல்லாருமே என்ன சொன்னாங்கன்னா, விமனுங்கிறதுனால என்கிட்ட இருந்து அவங்க குறைவாகவும் வேலை வாங்கலை, பட் எங்களுக்கு சப்போர்ட்டும் பண்ணாங்க. ஸோ ஒரு உமன் இந்த பப்ளிக் ஹெல்த் டிபார்ட்மெண்ட்டில் வந்து ஒரு பேண்டமிக்கை பார்க்க முடியுமா அப்படின்னா முடிந்தது, வித் சப்போர்ட் ஆஃப் எவ்ரிபடி. அட் த சேம் டைம் இட் வாஸ் ரியலி சேலஞ்சிங். பட் we are evolving. எங்களை வந்து திருப்பியும் எங்களை பழைய மாடலுக்கு கொண்டு போயிடாதீங்க. we don't want to go. we want to be with you. we want to support you in bringing up the society to a better level. Thank you.
என் பேர் வந்து ஆரவள்ளி. இந்த செப்டி டேங்க் தொழிலில் இந்த நம்மளும் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு நான் ஆர்வமாக அதை எடுத்து நான் செய்கிறேன். நிறையா பெண்கள் வந்து என்னை கேட்டிருக்காங்க, வீட்டுக்காரவங்களே கேட்டிருக்காங்க, என்ன மேடம் நீங்கள் லேடிஸாக இருந்து நீங்களே வர்றீங்களே, நான் வண்டிக்கு ஓனரும் நானே தான், அதேமாதிரி வண்டி நிற்கக்கூடாதுன்ட்டு தான் வேணும் நானே வந்து செய்கிறேன். பரவாயில்லையே நீங்கள்லாம் பண்ணுறப்ப எங்களுக்கே ஒரு உற்சாகமாக இருக்குது. இந்த தொழில் செய்யாத முன்னாடி ரொம்ப கஷ்டப்பட்டோம், சாப்பாட்டுக்கே வழி இல்லாமல் ரொம்ப கஷ்டப்பட்டோம். இந்த தொழிலுக்கு வந்தோம், நான் அடுத்தவங்கள்ட்ட நாங்கள் கையேந்தி நின்ன காலம். இப்போ வந்து நான் 10 பேர்த்துக்கு நான் வந்து ஹெல்ப்புன்னு கேட்குறவங்களுக்கு நான் செய்கிறேன். நான் என்ன மாதிரி இன்னும் பல பெண்கள் உருவாக்கணும், அவங்களுக்கு தைரியம் வரணும். இவங்க பண்ணுறப்ப நம்மளாலையும் பண்ண முடியும்.
என் பேர் சரண்யா, நான் பிகாம் முடிச்சிருக்கேன். நான் வந்து இங்கே எஃப்எஸ்டிபியில் வந்து ஒரு 6 மந்த்தாக ஒர்க் பண்ணிகிட்ருக்கேன். இங்கே வந்து நான் வந்து இன்சார்ஜாக இருக்கேன். இன்சார்ஜ் மீன்ஸ் வந்து அதான் ட்ரக்கு வர்றதுப்பா, அதோடைய இன்கமிங் ரிஜிஸ்டர், கலெக்ஷன் பைசா வாங்குறது, ப்ளஸ் இங்கே ஆட்களை மெயின்டைன் பண்ணுறது, ஃபுல் அண்ட் ஃபுல் மெயின்டைன் பண்ணுற மேம் இன்சார்ஜாக இருக்கேன் மேம். இப்போ நான் இங்கே வரும்போது கூட ஃபஸ்ட்டு கொஞ்சம் பதற்றத்தோடு தான் வந்தேன். இங்கே மோஸ்ட்லி நான் வரதுக்கு முன்னாடி ஒர்க் பண்ணவங்க எல்லாம் ஜென்ஸாக தான் ஒர்க் பண்ணிட்டு இருந்தாங்க. நான் ஃபஸ்ட்டு இங்கே வந்து நான் அந்த ஃபீக்கல் ஸ்லெட்ஜில் நான் தான் ஃபஸ்ட்டு லேடியாக ஒர்க் பண்ணுறேன். இங்கே வரும்போது நிறைய ட்ரக்ஸ் டிரைவரும் கூட நிறைய பிரச்சனை வரும். அவங்கக்கிட்ட புரிய வச்சு அவங்களுக்கான மீட்டிங்ஸ்லாம் போட்டு அதுக்கேற்ற மேம் அது கரெக்டான இதுக்கு வந்தாங்க. நம்ம வீட்டில் இது ஒரு அருவருப்பான தான் நம்ம கருதுவோம். பட் ஆனால் இங்கே வரும்போது வந்து அதுலேயே இவ்வளோ விஷயங்கள் இருக்குதா, இவ்வளோ நன்மை, இதில் நிறைய விஷயங்கள் இருக்குது கற்றுக்கினேன். அந்த சாதனை ஸ்லட்ஜுன்னு சொல்கிறது கழிவுன்னு சொல்லிட்டு நம்ம ஒதுக்குறோம், அதை நிறைய யூஸ்ஃபுல்லாக மாற்றலான்றதை நான் இங்கே வந்து கற்றுக்கினேன். இது நம்ம பிளான்ட்டை நம்ம பார்த்துக்குறோம்.
sunu kër toilette yi fi am mooy genre toilette yi moderne yi, chaise anglaise, chasse ak lavabo et tout. Parce que góor ñi duñu teel a jóg te man maay njëkk jóg. D'abord comme man maay njëkk jóg moo tax man maa koy defar. ñun sunu douche bu fattee ñun jigéen ñi ñoo koy jël en charge defar ka, parce que góor ñi dañuy xëy dañuy liggéey, ñun ñoo fay des, ñoo fa nekk. tey bu fekkee ni diw moo moomee ki moomee mooy raxas du, parce que premièrement man maay njëkk raxas, mais ki nga xamante ni moom moomee raxas douche fu 10 heures jotee wala 11 heures ba xale yeeg mag ñi sangu ba pare, instant boobu dañ koy raxas, boyal ànd bi teg ko suur ka, ndax ki moomee kooku mooy chargé def loolu, ndax douche moo njëkk. ñun loolu mooy suñu problème, li ñu gis mooy loolu, en ce que ndox bi bañ a couler, bañ a dugg si néeg yi wala bañ a occuper diggu kër gi aussi, ñun loolu la ñu gis. loolu moo tax parce que d'abord yenn saa yi daan nañu woo à l'époque Lamine bi nga xamante ni moo daan débouché, même chaque fois bu fekkee da nga koy woo di ko fay, chaque fois nga koy woo di ko fay. léegi instant bi du lépp ngay mën a def di ko fay, ñu ni li muy def mën nañ ko, nan ko defal suñu bopp rek mu jeex. toilette yi xanaa ñun jigéen ñi ñoo ko res ñoo koy def.
Chamo Belmira Mavico Maronia, trabalho há 10 anos como motorista de caminhão de recolha de resíduos sólidos. O meu trabalho é um pouco complexo, porque requer muita concentração. A gente remove contentores em lugares, em esquinas apertadas, com muito tráfego, sabemos que contentores ficam à beira da estrada e na lixeira onde a gente deposita o lixo. É outro desafio, porque lá tem muitas moscas, muito fumo, mau cheiro, é uma imundície. Tenho enfrentado alguns desafios, como pessoas que, pelo fato de eu estar no lixo, me acham também de lixo. Como, por exemplo, eu já tive uma briga na estrada por causa do tráfego e o motorista acabou me chamando, tem razão, estás a conduzir caminhão de lixo porque também és lixo. Então, são esse tipo de coisinhas que acontece. Eu gosto do meu trabalho, gosto mesmo de dirigir, gosto do que faço. A área não é do outro mundo mesmo, sabe-se, hoje tem mulheres que dirigem caminhão de longo curso, né? Então, quando a gente quer, a gente consegue, força de vontade primeiramente, que a gente tem que pôr em frente. Dizer eu quero, eu posso, e acabamos conseguindo.
என் பேர் யாக்கோப்பு. நாங்கள் இருப்பாளர் சுய குழுவில் டெண்டருங்கிற இருப்பாளர் சுய குழுவில் நான் ஒரு மெம்பராக இருக்கேன். இந்த பாத்ரூம் இதை மெயின்டைன் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம். துப்புரவு அவ்வளோ சவால்களையும் சமாளிச்சுட்டு தான் வந்துட்டுருக்கு. இந்த ஏரியாவில் இந்த சைடு வந்து ஒரு பாதுகாப்பு இல்லாத ஏரியா இது. நிறையா சவால்கள்னால் நிறையா ட்ரிங்க்ஸ் அடிக்கிறவங்க, எந்த ஸ்மோக் பண்ணுறவங்க, இவங்கெல்லாம் வந்து இப்போ நிறையா அராஜகமாக பண்ணுவாங்க. எனக்கும் வீட்டில் இருக்கிறவங்களுக்கும் கொஞ்சம் பிரச்சனை வந்தது. என்னை வந்து ஒரு தள்ளி வச்சு தான் நின்று பார்த்தாங்க. ஒரு காலகட்டத்தில் வெளியில் போ அப்படின்னு சொல்கிற அளவுக்கு வந்துட்டாங்க. நானும் கண்ணீரோட அம்மா வெளியில் வந்தேன். அம்மாவும் என்னை விட்டுட்டு இருக்க மாட்டேன் அப்படின்னு சொன்னாங்க. நீ எங்கே இருப்பியோ அங்கே தான் நான் இருப்பேன் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு அம்மாவும் ஒரு சின்ன குழந்தை மாதிரி என் கையை பிடிச்சிட்டு கூடவே வந்துட்டாங்க. வந்ததுக்கப்புறம் இதே இடத்துல ஒரு கொட்டாய் மாதிரி புடவையோட அம்மாவோட சாரியை எடுத்து அதை அப்படியே ஒரு தடுப்பு மாதிரி கட்டி இந்த இடத்துல நான் இருந்தேன். மக்கள் வந்து 3ஆம் பாலினத்தினர்னா என்னமோ ஒரு வேண்டாத பொருளை பார்க்குற மாதிரி பார்த்துட்டு ஒரு அருவருப்பை பார்க்குற மாதிரி ஒரு என்ன சொல்ல ஒரு கம்பளி புழுவை பார்க்குற மாதிரி தான் பார்ப்பாங்க. ரொம்ப கஷ்டப்பட்டு தான் இந்த இதுக்கு வந்திருக்கேன். ஆனால் நிறைய பேர் வந்து கூப்பிடுவாங்க, இங்கே போகலாம் அங்கே போகலாம் அப்படின்னு கூப்பிடுவாங்க. நான் வரல, எனக்கு இதுலேயே நான் சம்பாதிக்கிறதுல நிறையவா இருக்குதுன்னு சொல்கிறேன். சுகாதாரத்துறையில் வந்து 3ஆம் பாலினத்தினருக்கான வாய்ப்புகள் நிறையவே இருக்குது, வேலை வாய்ப்புகள் நிறையா இருக்குது. நம்ம தான் இறங்கி வந்து இந்த வேலையை செய்கிறோம் அப்படின்னு துணிஞ்சு வரணும். இந்த வீடு எங்களை மதிக்க வேண்டும், இந்த வீடு மதித்தால் தெருவு மதிக்க வேண்டும், தெருவு மதித்தால் ஊர் மதிக்க வேண்டும், ஊர் மதித்தால் மாவட்டம் மதிக்க வேண்டும், மாவட்டம் மதிக்க வந்தால் மாநிலம் மதிக்க வேண்டும், மாநிலம் மதித்தால் இந்த நாடு மதிக்க வேண்டும், இந்த நாடு மதித்தால் இந்த உலகமே எங்களை மதிக்கும். அப்படி மதித்தா இந்த உலகமே போற்றக்கூடிய தலைவர்களாகவும் துறையை சார்ந்த அதிகாரிகளாகவும் மேன்மேலும் வளர எங்களால் முடியும் என்று என்னால் சாதித்து காட்ட முடியும்.
What the workers themselves are saying and discussion. I feel like
Hi, Christian, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. 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 Yes
Is Christian or someone from the tech team around to help the online participants to get into the breakout room? Nelly, should we share the Jamboard with the participants online so that we can, because there seems to be no breakout from the online participants.
Do we have a number for Christian? No. There's no other way of reaching out to the tech team.
This is a 5-minute warning. We have 5 more minutes, everyone, and please decide on who's going to report out. At the end of the 5 minutes. Has everyone got their messages on the sheet? We have okay, everyone, we're going to start the meeting up now. Can I have everyone's attention, please? Thank you. So we're going to start the report up now. I hope all of you have your messages. Now, we will be collecting really useful for us. And so yeah, we have to hand them over once we're done. We will do the report out by the 3 key topics. Like we'll go one by one. So we'll start off with the first one. That's strengthening women's leadership in sanitation. That was this group here. Do you want to? Yes, yes, and just a small request, we'll try and keep it a little short, so we have to go through all the groups and the ones online, and we have another part of the presentation then. Thank you.
Sure, so for group 1, we talked, our 3 things were really for considering the origin of these women's work and the informal at the community level, especially the unpaid. How can we really work to have those considered as serious positions and like education, career discussions, networking, which brought us to our second point about limited, isolated networking opportunities and lack of role models, and how can even these sanitation networks connect to other services that are male dominated. And then our last point was really how to effectively communicate the whole process and really highlight where there are points of innovation and opportunity and like the whole life cycle, I guess I would call it, of waste management. So whether it's at the beginning or whether it's at the end, like we saw in the video, she had the plant where she was kind of reusing it and kind of relating back to the circular economy.
Thanks for that.
Thank you for that. Who else will discuss the group? I think the one at the back, who else will discuss?
And also the one on online.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that online. Okay, so we said that there needs to be regular pay and financial recognition for both administrative and engineering jobs, and then also in the labor intensive jobs. And then we also said that both men and women need to be included in the sanitation field, and that men need to use the position, especially in patriarchal society, to uplift and garner respect for women in the sanitation roles that they're in. And then we also said something similar to the last group, so creating role models and empower women in the sanitation field to champion sanitation, which could cause like some sort of, I guess, infectious spread to neighboring communities, to then also have women having the sanitation roles in other communities. Thanks for that. I think we'll move online. They were also discussing the first topic here. Abhinasha?
Hi. So there were some interesting discussions online. So around strengthening women's leadership in sanitation. So the first key message we have is around adequate finance. So women need access to adequate finance alongside leadership roles, support with adequate finance. The second key message we have is genuine political participation of women to be ensured. And the third key message we have is to move towards empowerment and rights from tokenistic inclusion. And there were some case studies and some examples shared online about, financing women entrepreneurs. A lot of discussions around women entrepreneurs online, and also about the need for skill building and social security of women entrepreneurs in sanitation, building managerial skills and providing access to resources. So these were the key points which emerged, and some of the key messages which came up, which I just called up. Thanks a lot to the virtual participants.
Thank you. Thanks, Abhi, for that. Okay, I think that was the first group. We can move on to valorizing roles played by women in sanitation. And I will hand that out to who is you.
Hi, yeah, we talked about how specific roles in sanitation are less valued. How we saw in the video, the truck driver, and then more the informal roles like cleaning sanitation systems at home are not really considered quote unquote work. And then also the sanitation career in general in some communities might not be considered as prestigious or valuable, especially the positions like pit emptying. And then we also were talking about the discrepancy between the informal and formal jobs, and how the informal work like cleaning shared toilets was mainly women, and the more formal jobs like at the treatment plant are mainly men.
Thank you. We talked about pretty similar things, really focusing on elevating existing work that women are doing at home in the community in informal ways to maintain and clean and empty their systems. And then also talk a lot about workforce entry and training and what does incentivizing look like, and like acknowledging that it isn't necessarily work that women or people want to do. And so what are the training methods, the technologies, the access, the PPE that need to happen, and like being paid well enough to make it worth it to participate in this professionally. And then also talked about combining both the work that's already being done as well as opportunities for training, for safety, for PPE to continue to destigmatize participation in the formal way while valuing informal work.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to say that we have a reflections session right at the end, and so I'm thinking many people would want to respond on all of this when we can open it up for discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about the barriers that prevent women from taking up frontline roles in the sanitation value chain. A lot of it is based on my own experience as the work I do at Synergy, and some of the issues that came up are the issue around the physical nature of the work, right? We are talking about someone emptying the toilets or such work. And the need for us to do a lot of mechanization to try and make the whole of that space, the whole of that physical work more safer for women. And then there are something that also came out of the issue of security. So some of these sanitation jobs are done very early in the morning or late at night. So how can we make the community as a whole safer for women to be able to work at late night or very early in the morning? That's critical. And then lastly, our own experience is that there's a big opportunity for women to become entrepreneurs around the sanitation value chain. And it's a matter of empowerment, what we call like business coaching and providing financing. We have seen a lot of women, for example, take up the Synergy toilet and operate them as a business in Nairobi, Kenya. So yeah, that's what we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and I think we'll add the last group.
We touched on many of the same things as the other groups, unsurprisingly. So the first one we talked about was how to rely on government or recruit governments in better supporting and driving inclusion within the sanitation sector. And related to that, financing concerns. We talked specifically about how to not view women-owned businesses as small micro entrepreneurs, but thinking about how to have them work at scale or at larger scale, and understanding what would enable them to do so. We talked about technological constraints to including women or people with disabilities or those who don't have the typical or conventional strength to operate machines, as well as the limitations of using more mechanized solutions in terms of the expense involved and their inability to navigate in areas that are smaller. And then lastly, we talked about changing the brand image of sanitation from something that's a dirty job to something that is the people working in it are really playing a critical role. And yeah, just reframing it.
Thank you, everybody. That was really good feedback and messages that have come out from this discussion. We've actually done really well on time. So I was thinking we could maybe open it up a little bit now for a couple of minutes. If anybody wants to add anything to what we've discussed so far, any other comments, any other questions that you want to raise before we move on to another short presentation and then the reflection. Okay, online, I know there are quite a few people online. Abhi, are there any questions or any comments people who are online want to make at this point?
Not as yet, but I will just notify if there are questions on the chat.
Okay, thanks. So then, if there's nothing right now, we'll move on and then maybe we can start discussions at the last. Yeah.
I'm surprised there are no reflections.
Okay, okay.
So basically, right now we spoke about what are the challenges and what are some of the things we could do. The second part of the session really focuses more concretely on what we could do. And for that, I'm just going to highlight one of the few things that one thing we've been doing, which is running a campaign and using it as a tool. So some of the films you saw were from this Women in Sanitation campaign. Just a show of hands, if any of you or how many of you were aware of this campaign before today? No one. Okay, so we obviously had a very outreach very specific to India. Just a little bit about this. We've been running this for 3 years now on International Women's Day, which is 8 March, and basically you saw the variety of workers and the women professionals. And the idea is, what was the idea of the session, which is to recognize the wide range of women, celebrate their voices. And as you would have seen and evident in the session, what this has also enabled is to open up a series of conversations about women professionals, which were not happening earlier, and speaking in the context of India. We've featured around 30 stories right now. So these are 2-minute clips running on Twitter, Instagram, etc. They've covered a wide range of workers, which was obvious. We do have a dedicated web page. You could scan it now, or there's some small postcards and batches here if you would like to pick it up. And while for the first 2 years, we kept it very specific to India and in fact to Tamil Nadu, last year we opened it up with OVERDUE to some of our partners in Africa, and we're hoping going forward to open this up. So if any of you are interested, like I said, please do sign up, drop your business cards, and we really want to make this more of a global effort. And the videos have garnered more than 1 lakh views. It's not a huge number, but given we really struggled to just get voices on sanitation heard. So compared to that, actually, our videos on women did very well. And interestingly, people who were not interested in sanitation started talking about it and asking questions about this. We've got featured in various Indian publications, top publications. They cover stories of people. One of the films we made won the World Emptying Challenge Toilet in FSM6. And like I said, this has proved to be a space where we opened up conversations. So we did a tweet chat one of the years, then we hosted a session on Twitter Spaces, etc. So we are using these very, very short stories as a way to open up much needed conversations with different stakeholders. Like I said, some of it has been international, but going forward, really looking to expand the mandate of this campaign. So what was some of the learnings? So one of the interesting thing was, and we were because we work closely with the government, we were little jittery to ask pretty senior officers to start reflecting on themselves, right? But they were very happy, and all across the workers shared that they had never got an opportunity to speak about themselves. And so the stories that came out were very, very interesting. Second thing is, obviously all of them face challenges, and to us, right from a senior most person to a person, sanitation worker face challenges. Of course, there were nuances to that challenges, as you will see in some of the videos that are available on YouTube. Very interestingly, not surprisingly, intersectionality plays a great role. And this came out in the stories also. So we had one of the government officers who had a disability, and she spoke about that, how that and a gender identity really affected her career. And many sanitation workers in India are of a particular caste. So they spoke about that. So this also came out, and it's not that we went probing for those questions. So the interviews were very open-ended, just tell us about yourself, tell us about your work, that kind of thing. They're all very proud of it. So the workers those who have smartphones have put it on their WhatsApp status. We've also made sure the media articles come, we send it back to them. The government officers have actually approached and said, it's great you guys are talking about this. Nobody really asked about us, and they invited us in to then start doing gender sensitization training and stuff. And we've been improving our response. Obviously, people in the room hadn't heard, so we need to do better, but I'm hoping we can collectively take this forward. So yeah, and that's just a very briefly about the campaign. You can go to the YouTube and see it. Like I said, we've opened it up to partners now. So the last one was really done in collaboration, and going forward, we hope to, bring it up. So that's pretty much about the campaign. Happy to take questions on the campaign, but really use the remaining 15 minutes of time to reflect collectively on what are some of the ways we can actually support women professional workers. What are the thoughts around the room? This must have come up in the group work, but we can more concretely focus on the actions. And also, if there's a way, if people in this room would like to continue as a group and do something together, join the campaign or some other thing online as a learning group, we could do that. So I'm going to just leave it open and please, participate.
Thank you, Kamsa. It's really interesting to learn about this, so thank you for sharing. And I'm impressed at how many views you've gotten and also all the media coverage. So I'm wondering if you've been able to see or evaluate if any sort of perceptions of the general public have changed as a result of these campaigns, and how, and also the perceptions of how the women sanitation workers feel like they're treated. It might be too soon, I don't know if that's to see, but if that's something that you're gonna look into or if you're thinking about.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So yes, partly it's too soon, but we have seen changes. So for example, like I said, in the government department, this was actually our entry point into gender, right? To open up other conversations, and where the women professionals actually said open up. And then we heard from their male colleagues, okay, this is really great. And we did hear things like, we didn't know they face so many issues, we never talk about it, right? We got some of the similar responses from sanitation workers, male colleagues, and their families. So I would say we're not able to quantify it, but in the circles we move around, it's made a difference. I think it's made a difference to our team and our larger, like we work with a lot of partners saying that, oh, we really never talked about this, right? We didn't know. And so it's definitely made a difference in the limited circles that we reached out to.
Hi, thank you so much for that session. It was really interesting to hear some of those stories. I'm curious a bit on the key learning point on intersectionalities, and especially in India when it comes to sanitation, we're grappling with caste issues as well. So I was just wondering, did you come across, I don't know, maybe again it's too soon, but has this in some way helped to like transform or break like social norms around gender and caste in particular, particularly in sanitation and like emptying roles? Like, do you have keen to hear a story? Thank you.
Okay, it's way too early for that. But just to speak about some of the other work and speaking about this later in the afternoon, apart from this, because we had such great response to this, we've also started a panel called We Speak To, which is basically running across the city, which is a different format, which is a live session and an audience like this. And we get sanitation workers, including women sanitation workers, to sit on the stage and speak. So they are not, somebody's not interpreting, they have the whole session to themselves. And with the combination of this and gender, like I said, it's way too low to change now. But I think there is a discussion around this, right? And particularly around caste, because once you talk to sanitation workers, caste comes up, there's no way. So yeah, some of the opening of the conversation.
Thank you so much. This has been such an interesting session. A question that I have is, given that it has been a male-dominated field, how have you engaged men as you try to bring in more women into these positions? And what has been the reaction? What has worked for you in terms of getting their support? Thinking around that would be great.
Yeah, so one is we could do better for sure, but what we didn't feature is in some of every year along with say 5 women, stories about women professionals, we do feature 1 or 2 men. And these are men typically who have been an ally, right? So to give you a concrete example, there is a head of a small NGO that we partner with. He's been working with Dalit women workers since God knows when. So he's spoken about his experiences, right? And we have another queer man who's spoken about his work with sanitation workers. So that's one. So obviously, because we've spoken to men who've been in this role, they've been very supportive and helped us connect. But in general, what we are doing is we're ensuring if we're doing Twitter spaces, right? Or if we're doing any online thing, we try to get men and get them to engage. I have to say, the response has been quite positive. Now, whether that translates into concrete action, we don't know, but there is definitely with the government, when those conversations are open, men have supported. So yes, initial response positive. Whether that will translate into a concrete policy action, we have to see as we go forward. But we are very conscious of the fact that we get some male voices in this. Sorry, and just to add, one of the things, the men of the, say, the spouses of the women or even male like boys, they've been very proud when their mother or their wife has gone on. So that's been a nice.
Thanks. Yeah, that's also good to hear. What I think is an opportunity which we really haven't materialized, or we haven't really taken that opportunity, is all microfinance by and large is owned by women. It's dominated 90%. Some are really women. And for a bottom-up progress, which also is required, so to get from the women groups, they easily can access microfinance, and from there they can also move on. So I realize we need to on both sides, but the bottom-up approach also really helps in firming up developments. At the same time, it also brings in access to funding, independence. So there's a lot of, I don't know if you already moved into that sector, but I think that's a great opportunity because it's there in Africa as well as in India or other countries. So there is, I think that's where we can really make a quick change. So quickish.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. We have been working with many self-help groups. We've been working, with Help and Connect. Like I said, I'm happy to have a separate conversation. But I do want to highlight that that's very important because in the stories of both private sector and informal, not so much on the public sector side, the issue of finance, and I think a couple of reports, groups reported out, it's been an issue that they don't have access to finance, and where we see success stories, it is because at some point some family member or somebody supported them in that initial thing. So yeah, the finance story is pretty much cutting into our company. So we had a lot of questions from front of the room. I don't know. Yeah, there's one here, right?
My first one actually is I'm really interested in how you might move this forward later. You mentioned something about a group. So I know a lot of us actually work in sanitation. And when we talk about engaging value chain actors, it's always men. So really interested in that. I think maybe you'll address that after.
Yes, so we could no. So one of the things is please drop your contact details and we form an email group. But the part of this discussion is around on how we could work together. So if you have any suggestions, I mean, we're happy to take that along. But if you have any suggestion how the group could work forward, please do speak about that.
It's interesting actually. So I work for IDE Global, and I know Elise actually, my colleague, is also here. And we're trying to look at pathways actually to involve more women in the sanitation value chain. I work for the Innovation Lab in Cambodia, and some of the things that they do really well is actually human-centered design research. So I think it's always going back to the value chain, trying to understand perspectives of women as users and designers, and their role potentially all across the value chain from containment to reuse and treatment. So I think that would be really great, having a group that, for example, use and maintenance, it just hit me now. One of the reasons why maybe it's so neglected is that it's invisible in labor, right? So we never do business model innovations or sanitation as a service innovation, maybe because it's a woman's job and it's just their responsibility to do and we don't interfere. So I think there are some really interesting areas for discussion moving forward. And actually, that was my second question. How do you think it links between the absence of certain things, like use of maintenance, for example, and even our own blind spots in the sector towards the role of women?
So thanks for that, and I'm going to hand it over to Mahima to online for some of the overdue members to respond. But just a quick response. Actually, before you ask the second question, what has struck us is there are two things. One is because women do this, but also because the people typically of lower caste, I'm sure in other countries, race and ethnicity may play a role. And more we dig into it, more we realize that nobody pays attention because frankly, and this is hard to say, nobody cares, right? And so the state of some of parts of the value chain and the state they are in, a lot of manual work, undignified work, is because people, they're women, they are of a certain caste or race. So yes, that's coming out clearly. I'm going to stop here. Overdue members have some responses. I'm just going to,
We can just ask them.
if they could speak and they could be unmuted, please.
Also, if there are questions to overdue, so that can be raised from this room, yeah.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
I think we really see the same dynamics of a link between unsatisfying sanitation conditions and the invisibilization of workers and needs. So especially when the worst of users and workers are the same person, that's where we see the value and the strategy to focus on women as sanitation workers. So picking up on the questions, I think in Saint Louis, Mwanza, Freetown, we organized, overdue partners organized numerous workshops just to talk about sanitation work, who's cleaning the toilets, who's emptying pits in communities, with municipalities, with utilities. And just these mere discussions were very powerful just to challenge the status quo and start questioning things as they were, the distribution of work, and opening up opportunities for women to voice their needs and their expectations. So if this is going to translate again into major social change is a question, but at least it really sparked interest across communities and new types of conversations that had not happened. Now, when looking at the question on engaging men, this one it's a very good question. Sanitation workers tend to say, yes, that they would support women in their trade, but at the same time, we still noticed many stereotypes on what they believe women can do or cannot do or should do. And this seems to be a limit for the partners in several cities. We identified that there was more opportunities around innovation. So what was presented as an innovation, like innovative design, composting, biogas. So through innovations in sanitation, it seems strategic as an entry point to empower women, not just in a token way, but also to allocate more resources, more skills, and more leadership to women around these sanitation innovations, then to reclaim status and resources on more conventional sanitation work. And maybe on the last one, yes, on access to finance, I think this is also a common issue across all the cities where we work, and one where Overdue is currently trying to support mechanisms such as revolving fund, co-funding, participatory budgeting. But here, one of the challenges we're facing is really the de-responsibilization of many utilities, authorities, municipalities, which seem to value the work of NGOs and CSOs when it comes to sanitation and gender, but tend to relegate the responsibility for investment and intervention to these actors instead of taking it up as their core function.
Thanks for that, Nelly. And since you are here on video as well, and we can see you, I don't know if Julia or Nelly, you had anything else to add since you heard the group work, anything you want to just say? We've got around 7-8 minutes left, but anything from your side? No, okay, fine. Okay, so we can come back to the room. Any more reflections? Only one person spoke from the back. We're nearly there. So any last quick thoughts, and then we can start wrapping up.
So we talked a lot about getting women involved in these budding businesses and other technical roles. I'm curious if you've engaged at all with the health promotion and behavior change space. which is often run by volunteers who are often unpaid women. I'm curious if you've engaged with that space at all, if you see any interaction between the two.
Oh, very interesting and no clear answer. So yes, we do work with the health promotion space. We've not working so much on hygiene, but more of communication, behavior and communication around the food chain. One of the things we've been conscious on, and this is something actually even government of India recognized, many of this messaging, there are two facts. One is that it's done by unpaid women volunteers, and second also is many of the messaging is around for women, as if it's their sole responsibility. So one, we've been careful in our messaging to not stereotype people into roles it's only the woman in the house taking care of the cleaner. So that's one of the things that we've been careful of. In terms of reaching out, we do have self-help groups who maintain toilets, so we've been working through them. But you're right, it can become unpaid. So we are working with those self-help groups to strengthen their business model. So there's something in there for that. It's not a fully sorted out story, but we are very aware of that and working with them so that they're doing it and they're getting paid for it. Yeah, but it's a huge problem, especially for health workers. Okay, so if there's nothing else, we are just going to, we have 5 minutes, but we want you to take some time to give us some feedback and also put it up in parallel and also use this time to again drop your business cards, sign, there's some brochures. And yeah, the feedback form is just going to come up. Sorry, yeah, and your group work, all your sheets, not just 3 key messages sheets, just leave it on a chair, we'll pick it up. No problem, but please leave all the sheets, all your discussions here, read that. Sorry, the feedback form will be up in a minute. And thank you all so much. It was a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much. You can just scan for the feedback.
Yeah, that's kind of what were you guys doing between Seattle and Very good, yeah, well done. Every Thursday night.
Oh.
Got all of it.
Oh, we have one.